Have you seen Severance?
Severance. Is this the one where they have two lives? Yeah, I'm aware of its existence.
You've
and
got to watch it.
No, I can't get into it. Frankie's watching it. Frankie loves it.
So it's on, and you're not paying attention, or what?
So Frankie's a cow. Nice one if you're listening, Frankie. In that we'll start a series, and then because she works from home, I'll come in and it'll be on. I'll be like, "What are you watching?" She's like, "Oh, just watching a few episodes of Severance." I'm like, "Oh, right, okay. Nice one."
In the lunch break, yeah.
But no, with that, I've struggled.
How have you struggled? It's the best thing that's been on TV since The Sopranos, I reckon.
Well, clearly you haven't seen The City Is Ours.
Oh no, I haven't.
Or Adolescence.
Oh, see, I haven't seen Adolescence, but that is on the list to watch. That was it. That's been talked about, hasn't it?
Both Liverpool based.
Yeah,
not a coincidence.
Anything he's in, Stephen Graham, is good. He is top draw.
He's very good.
He's very, very good.
He's very good.
So you haven't seen...
So I'm aware of the concept.
Right.
I know what's happened. I know that when they're inside, they don't remember what life's like outside.
So they got a chip in the brain.
Yeah.
And then when they go down in the elevator, when they get to this building that they work in, Lumen, they can't remember anything from the outside. Then when they come back out, they can't remember anything that happened on the inside.
But they're having some flashbacks.
No.
Oh.
So the reason that happened is because the main guy, Adam Scott, is trying to reintegrate. Cordelia, have you seen Severance? Oh God, you're all missing out.
Adam Scott is the main guy. Brother in Step Brothers.
Yeah,
which is his best.
That one,
which is his best ever role.
Oh yeah, so good. But he's phenomenal in this. So he was trying to reintegrate, basically.
Okay.
So the story.
And the redhead, is she flame-haired lady?
Yeah.
She is the owner outside, but inside she's just a worker.
So you're soaking a bit of it up.
I've got some of it. I just couldn't tell you what happened in the last episode.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm in a Telegram group with a load of footy fans from the Anfield Rap podcast, and then they have a separate little group for Severance stuff, and then they put spoilers in because anyone watch it. So I understand its quality, and
you're within the
interest.
Okay, well, I would really recommend watching it first of all. And it's so interesting because there are many layers to it. Obviously, then when you get into the actual story of it, and basically he's the guy Adam Scott. This is the first series. He went through the severance process because his wife, he thought his wife died, and he wanted to sort of have respite from it all and grieving and whatever. So there's loads of interesting layers to it. But I think the thing that I thought was worth speaking about, which is I suppose one of the big main themes of it, is the way people feel about their work.
They have a big "this is our culture" type thing, don't they? I remember one where they said, "We're going to have a party," and it was the cheesiest party ever.
Oh yeah, when Milchick does the dance, it's so good. That's for sure. So even if you look at Lumen, the company, they're very much culty kind of company with lots of traditions, lots of very strange mechanisms that make the philosophy, which is of this guy Keir. That's the name. The name of the main guy. So it's very much like a religious cult sort of company. But it made me think, particularly the first season, about I wonder how many people, even though I'm sure there are very few people in the world that would go through a procedure to sever their memories, but who almost feel a bit like that at work, that they just go in and they're just going through the motions of something.
Interestingly, I wrote down the phrase religious cult that you mentioned as well, and I wonder how many people see companies that one might perceive to have a good company culture and wonder if they're a bit of almost a cult-like.
There's often an element of that, and you can see this sort of overlap of, I suppose, criteria of what you see within a cult and then what you see within a really strong culture. Obviously, the etymology of the word is the same. And there are things, there's particular language that companies use. So, for example, let's think of a company. I'm probably not going to be able to think of any examples off the top of my head, but you have a company like, Airbnb, and they call the people who work there Airbnbers. Like these sort of things. Like you see lots of the way that they speak with each other, some of the very specific vocabulary that they use internally is like someone else would come in and they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. So there's lots of overlaps because it's the same thing. Like a cult is in essence, is a very strong culture. That's what it is. There's then, when you put the sort of religious connotation on it, that then informs the philosophy, and that's sort of like the reason for being behind it. But they're, structurally speaking, they're very, very similar, very similar. And I can even think of this with a number of my clients, of when you go in and they've gone through that process of they've built a really strong culture and they use language, you can sort of get a bit, it's a bit like, is this a bit culty here? You get that sort of accusation made, but it's because they're one and the same thing. But I was thinking with Severance of, I'd imagine work feels a bit like that for lots of people, as you've got your sort of like real life on the outside, and then you go in and you just have to go through the motions. It's the sort of living for the weekend curse that lots of people have experienced. I even feel like at the start of, when I started working, I probably experienced flashes of that. If you're just looking at, waiting for the clock to strike 5. And that's always made me sad. Like I've always felt really sad about that. And I was sort of thinking, well, what's the antidote? Like, how do you overcome that? Because there's been lots of conversations recently about entrepreneurialism, and it's absolutely something I would encourage for any who have the appetite to do it. But of course, everybody can't be an entrepreneur. It's just not going to happen. You take a sample of the population, a few of them will be entrepreneurs, and then other people don't want that for whatever reason. And I also have a lot of respect for people who just think, I just want an easy life, want to work for someone, not take the stress home.
Societally, it wouldn't work either, because if everyone was a leader, then we would have no one to follow them.
Of course. So I, not denigrating the encouragement of people who have the aptitude to be an entrepreneur to be, and I think there's a very, very wide spectrum of people who can do that or learn to want to do that. But there are many people who just want a job, want a normal job, and going to work for a company. And I think the thing that I was thinking that would be the antidote to feeling that way, that when you go into work and you're just going through the motions and you're living for the weekend or you're living for the evenings, is some form of meaning. Is you're able to feel that your working life is worth something, is meaningful, has impact. And there are lots of different types of companies out there. There are lots of companies out there that, by nature, you look at organisations like the NHS. It's very apparent that the NHS do something really important in society. So everybody working in there, you'd hope, they'd feel like, well, this is important what we do. You can see the impact that it has day to day on people's lives. But then there are lots of companies that are sort of abstract tech companies that provide a middle management bit of software that goes between two things. And it's harder to, I suppose, intrinsically go, well, this is the thing that it's contributing to the world. However, there's another level of how, and obviously, again, I always try and look things through the lens of leaders, of how you can encourage or facilitate someone to glean what their meaning is in the world. And it doesn't have to be just from the thing that the company do or the thing that they produce. It can be about the team that you work with and the impact you have on everybody around you, or the thing that, how hard you work for the leader and how much easier you make their lives, or in small parts, the way you make your customers or clients' lives easier and more enjoyable or more efficient, or whatever it might be. And that's something that because of the technology age that we're in and have been in for 20 years, this subject of abstraction that I'm sure we've discussed before, of just this kind of like separation of understanding the connection between what you do and the impact that it has. You just kind of feel like you're in this thing that you just don't know. Like, I always think about, you go into a company, into an office, and people are looking at screens on spreadsheets or picking up phones to what are usually faceless voices. And we're not really used to doing that as a species. That's not how we're used to doing business. We see the impact that it has. And you're really at risk, and inevitably it's going to happen. And particularly when you're doing the same thing over and over with high volume, it just becomes a hazy process that you don't really know what it's actually doing. I remember experiencing this when at the start of my career, I did a stint in working like in high volume recruitment. And when I first started, it was like, okay, there's a company who needs a person to do the X job. Then there are loads of people here and they've given me their CV, which sort of shows me what they do. And then I'm going to speak to those. You start doing that regularly enough. By a couple of weeks, you're like, right, I've got a list of requirements on a job description. And then I've got like do keyword searches on these CVs. Like I've completely abstracted the thing. It's a list of requirements in a CV. And that's what I'm doing. The people and the clients and whatever is completely lost to me. And when you work for a company that doesn't actively try to undo that and try to sort of actually draw the line between this is what you do and this is the impact it has, whether it is on your customers, your clients, or whether it's on the people that work around you, you're going to feel like you're hamster on a wheel. It's inevitable.
I've definitely felt that way before when I used to work in a factory.
That would be a good example, wouldn't it? Factory. So go on, tell us.
So it's a metal box, and they made metal boxes.
That's something like poignant. You're in a metal box making metal boxes.
It was called Metal Box.
Oh, really?
It was in a metal box called Metal Box. We made metal boxes.
Right. Well, they got the marketing bang on.
Well, I don't think they marketed themselves. So they used to make like the 5-litre tins of Castrol GTX.
Yeah, okay.
And the little Lockheed's oil.
Yeah.
And Quality Street tins and drums for things and stuff like that. And quite often your job was, one of the worst jobs was putting the handles on the tins. They have a big bucket of handles, a conveyor belt taking tins back, and you used to put the handles on before they went into the furnace to be welded. Really difficult to draw any purpose from that.
Yeah. So, and listen, let's talk within the realms of reasonableness here.
Yeah.
Every metal box that you're making, I'm not suggesting you go like, oh, this is important what I'm doing here. However, you're in a factory with lots of other people, I would imagine.
Yes.
And you're part of a manufacturing line in some way. It is, of course, the case that you, through your competence, your efficiency, as well as then your personality and the crack that you're having with everybody else, make a big difference on everybody else's life.
No.
Oh.
So in the metal box, they had print lines, and they had the lines that made the metal and cut the metal, and the lines that stamped the metal, and the lines that put the metal together. So you had to wear ear defenders. So not only was it mundane, there was also zero social connection with people. And you said your skill, the personality.
The last one, yeah.
The skill and personality wasn't necessarily a prerequisite for people who work there either.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. That's a hot.
No, and it's so. And my point on that was, and that's why I read them out down. It's like, how do you build a culture there? And then never, because the culture was very backstabby, very. I don't know. He's got a job. He's got his mate a job. There was a lot of like
nepotism.
Yeah. Stuff like well, my uncle was running the factory. My dad worked there. And I got a job there when I was 16. Sorry if the DSS are listening. I did make up my social security number for the first 6 months of my employment there. But so people in there would be less like that.
Yeah.
And that's when it is tough to build any. And that's why I probably did have some severance from that thing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Well, that's a tough. So let's say the culture of the company, you can make it. You've just highlighted like why the culture has manifested. Like they got nepotism, whatever. So there's that side of it. But yeah, on an individual basis of trying to get some meaning from it, that's pretty tough there. Yeah.
I don't think anyone can come after me now because it's quite a few years since I worked there. Used to break the machine, so you got a break. Like you put something in the wrong way, so they went down.
Yeah, it's a tough job.
My job was working online, but I would always end up doing some of the work that the engineers were doing and shift changeovers and stuff like that, because I wanted to do something of some purpose, which then didn't go down very well with all the people who, during the changeover on the line, would get an hour and a half to sit in the canteen and have a drink, coffee and stuff. And when you were helping, and therefore they had to come back in 45 minutes, that didn't go down too well. I used to derive most of my joy from brushing the shop floor.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. And me not being an expert in the manufacturing field, however, have taken a lot of inspiration from a company like Toyota, let's say, is they're a manufacturing line. Granted, they make something probably that most people would say more interesting than metal boxes.
Sexy as hell.
Yeah. However, they work on a manufacturing line. Each individual person, if you look at it through their eyes, they're doing the thing of putting the piston together or whatever. Putting the piston together. That's what I think. That's how I think you make pistons.
Clearly got a lot of experience there. If you ever decide culture's not for you, then putting them pistons together could be.
But a big people love working for Toyota, historically speaking. And I'm not making a comment on them today. And it's because of the culture that they've created, and it's a culture that that has just been the absolute is birthed the just-in-time manufacturing, and but basically the way the world works now. The Toyota way was a massive, sort of spearheading of that. And although they don't have the, let's say, camaraderie necessarily, they're part of something that they feel is really important. So there's still ways to do it, but I'm not an expert in. I couldn't comment on. Well, they could, this company could do the metal boxes like this.
I guess they get to see it as well, though. Like you'd see that really nice shiny car rolling off, and I'm guessing if you work for Toyota, you probably get a decent discount on a vehicle. So then there's probably a bit of purpose from that, making sure.
And they can see it, like they're because of the way that they work. So they're one of the principles is, we'll definitely talk about Toyota in depth at some point. But one of the principles they have is one piece flow. So this is part of how they were enabled to do just-in-time manufacturing. So rather than batching things, so let's say you've got pistons. So they're all on, there's loads of them on the line, and they're making pistons. And then what pistons? What do they go into? Help me.
In an engine.
Okay, yeah. So all right, fair enough. Okay, I know the piston goes in an engine. So you've got loads of people making pistons, yeah, and they're batching them. They've got 1,000 pistons that they've made, and then you do that, and then it's like, right, now let's make the rest of the engine that the pistons are going to go into. And you sort of create these chunks of things that you do, that you batch and then go on. So how the way Toyota works is one piece flow. So everything that they're making is always in motion, and a value is being added to it. So you don't just batch make the pistons. A piston is made, and then that goes on to man or woman who puts it in engine, etc.
I can see then how that would be much more enjoyable than, for instance, the stuff at Metalbox, where if the line was down, then you went over to making the lids.
Yeah. So you can see, because of one piece flow, you can see where you play. And I mean, like at Toyota, they've got the cords. If someone pulls the cords, everything stops.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating company. And it also made me think of, like you spoke about, you're in a metal box making metal boxes, and naturally you're going to be so abstracted from even like being able to picture someone on Christmas Day eating a tin of Quality Streets. It's like I made them. Like this, probably a thought that doesn't even occur to you. There are things that you can do as a company to try and overcome that abstraction. A really nice example of something that Dyson do. I talk about Dyson a lot. And one part of their philosophy is they were thinking about their induction day, and what they wanted to do is to help new starters understand that Dyson make products that people actually use. Like they wanted a real life manifestation of that happening. So the thing that they put in place that everybody does on their induction day is, from scratch, they build a Dyson Hoover.
Nice.
And they get to take it home.
Brilliant.
So if you think,
they're not cheap, them either.
Well, there you go. So then if you think about the philosophy is helping new starters to understand we make products people actually use. They make a product that they go home and actually use. A mechanism in place to make the philosophy actually happen.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, if I went and sat down with metal box company, and you sort of like looked across everything, you try to establish, well, what's the philosophy? And maybe they go, do you know what? Our philosophy on employees is it's not a job people are going to want to do for a long time. They come and do it for a month and then they come out and we're high turnover. Fair enough. I
think what they probably did was pay really good money.
They did. Yeah. That's what they did. Okay.
Yeah. So I was 16 and I was earning 200 quid a week.
Okay. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's their answer to it, which again, I'm always within the realms of keeping people in line with human nature. It's not my job to say what the philosophy is. That's for them. And that's I suppose a reasonable one is this is tough, but we pay really well. Fair enough. If there was something else that there was actually a feeling of not, obviously I'm not suggesting they would use this phraseology of we don't want our employees to suffer from abstraction or we want them to understand the impact there would be ways to do it. There would be ways to do it, but you have to think in that way. You have to think, what's the philosophy? How do we make that actually happen? Maybe it's the case that it's just, for cost reasons and this is the most efficient manufacturing line we can build and everyone else has ear defenders on and this is how it's got to work. Maybe that's the answer, that we're going to have relatively high turnover, but we're going to pay people to try and, bring out that duration.
And the soup was 5 pence.
Oh, good. A nice soup?
It was out of the machine, but it was decent.
Machine soup?
Yeah, like where you get a coffee machine?
Yeah.
It was like
This is depressing. Do they still exist? Are they still around?
It was really nice.
It was nice machine soup.
It was really nice. It was. Had croutons and everything. Chicken, veg, minestrone.
Chicken soup out of a machine. That sounds terrible.
It was actually, look, when your job is putting bits of metal on other bits of metal for 8 hours a day.
You look forward to your chicken soup.
Chicken soup is quite nice.
I mean, that's a treat. Sounds a lot like prison. But I'd be interested now because you were 16.
Yeah.
So it was like 5 years ago. If you were to go back and have some of that chicken soup, what you'd think of it?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't appreciate it as much these days.
Yeah. So anyway, you haven't seen Severance. You need to watch Severance.
No, I have seen it. I'm aware of it. I've watched bits of it.
Yeah, you know more than I do, actually.
I've watched bits of it. I know that one of them was quite a famous actor. He's gay when he comes out of the thing, but he's not when he's inside or something.
Oh, yeah. Can't remember his name. He's in Batman. He played.
Yeah.
He's good. But yeah, that's the main thing it made me think of is people. There are lots of people who like working for a metal box company where you sort of feel like you've been severed in some way. And that's sad. Surely that's objectively sad that lots of people go through their life where they feel like their working life is just going through the motion of something.
Yeah.
And one thing I can say with real confidence is no matter what you do, no matter how far you are away from something, by the nature of what you do for a business that is sort of like profoundly and NHS style, you can see the value of this and how important this is to the world, like on a sort of moral level. You can build meaning. You can do that, and it doesn't have to be about the product or service necessarily. It can be about the way you impact other people's lives.
But it's also interesting because I wonder, if I ever see a nurse or a doctor, and I just think, wow, wow.
Mm.
But then I wonder how many of them just think, oh God. I know people who play Premier League football who used to love footy when they were kids, who now it's just a job. Famously, Sylvain Distin, who used to play for Everton, never watched any football outside of the game he played.
Mm.
So there must be an element of the monotony of any kind of job that can turn you into that.
Well, they call it in medical professions, they call it compassionate fatigue.
Yeah.
Where it's just that it's the same thing. If you're doing, you think about the first time you're a doctor and you go into a room and whatever, something traumatic's happened. You do that enough times, it just becomes the thing you're used to. So I suppose in some ways in the medical world, it's something to an extent you have to do. You have to be able to. You can't go through the emotional ringer every 3 minutes when you're walking into a different room. But it's trying to find the balance. It's finding the balance of again, I'm speaking about an industry that I'm just very much not an expert in, but finding the balance of not going through trauma every 5 to 10 minutes, but understanding the impact that you have. Because if you go too far down that road, some of the effects that you would suggest you would encounter are things like lack of compassion towards patients and bedside manner and the way that you're communicating things, which obviously is very difficult. So it's just this thing, and no matter what you do, and this is a leader's responsibility. It's not everybody in a company is a leader, and when you're a leader, you have more responsibility than others, and you have to take that responsibility seriously. And what a cool thing to be able to do. Take out any sort of commercial stuff to the side. It does have massive impact, of course, of the way people feel about their work. It does affect the bottom line eventually and in a big way. But that's a nice thing to be able to do, to go, you've got someone here, they're spending 9 hours a day, 5 days a week in this company. So it's nearly the majority of their waking life. Draw lines for them, connect. This is what you do and this is the impact that it has. And do as much of that as you can. And you'll make someone potentially feel a bit better about their life. And this has knock-on impact. The thing that always, when I think about this, I always think about is if you have these sort of parallel universes of someone, let's say you have a father and he goes to work and he feels that severance and just no enthusiasm, motivation, fulfillment whatsoever from the work that he does. You can guarantee or certainly say that what's most likely to happen is that perspective of work is something that he will give his kids.
Yeah.
That you just go and you've got to do it. And that's the perspective, and you grow up and you think, well, that's what work is. I've got to just go to work. Versus someone who, no matter what they do, whether it's they're a CEO of a company or whether it's they work in a call center, and they are able to get some meaning, some fulfillment, they feel like what they do in the world matters, then that person goes home and that's the perspective they give their kids on what work is. To me, that's a cool thing, and that's something worth striving towards.
Can it go too far?
Let's do it.
So like you said something before when people talk about work as the family. Mm-hmm. Like, do you think it's gone too far when people say we're all family?
It's not. A business isn't a family, and nobody should say that.
Because whenever I think of the family, the first thing I think of is the book Helter Skelter, which is about the Manson family.
Yeah. It's not a family. People shouldn't say that. Is my very strong opinion.
Because like, when have you ever disciplined your child for not doing something and refused to give them pay?
Well, that's
when have you declined them an opportunity to go on holiday?
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, so if you take the basic constructs of what it means to be a family, there are boundaries to this, but you're talking about one of the sort of key things is unconditional love.
Yes.
It'd be fair to say, like that's one of the, again, I'm sure there are conditions to that at the extreme, but basically you've got kids and you love them no matter what. That's not the same for a company, or at least it shouldn't be. You can't have that. You can't have boundless, do whatever you want, perform how you want, and we'll love you, i.e. keep you within the family. That's not true.
Because people have got to know what their role is. There's got to be that clear communication of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and how to improve and where they can improve and stuff like that. Because we mentioned before adolescence, and in that film, like it's really tough in that show because something bad happens with the son, but like you see all of that, like, yeah, but it's my son. Yeah, I know, but he's something really terrible.
Yeah,
you can't do that in a business, can you?
You shouldn't. So if you let's classify that as performance.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say in a family you have a son that's performing in a way that's incongruent with what you would like. You don't fire your son, or I don't know. You can. I suppose
my mum's probably thought about it a few times.
But in a company, is with all the things you have to do before. If someone's not performing, is you coach them.
Put them on a pip.
Yeah, you do your best to coach them out of it. But then ultimately, if you don't get rid of that person because you just want to keep them because you're nice, then you'll have absolute chaos in the company, because that will predict how you behave with everybody else. So it's not a family. And the reason why I would really say don't say that is because you are, and family will mean different things to different people.
Of course, yeah.
But when you say family, you do sort of indicate some form of what we were talking about, whether it's unconditional love or whether it's, we'll always keep you safe. And you might get into the territory of, if you're a leader saying this is a family, thinking, well, they're not going to fire me because they're saying this is a family in some way, whether this is sort of unconsciously soaked up, which shouldn't be true. That can't be true of a company. You can't have that. You can't have loads of people not performing, because the business will cease to exist in the not too distant future. And there are lots of other reasons for it, but I think it's unfair to say that. I've never seen a situation where it's anything other than just a bit of a philosophical bypass. It's like it's a nice thing to say, oh, this is a family. It's nice thing, warm thing to say. And I certainly don't think, some of the people I've worked with, I can think of them, they're really nice people and they say family. It's just they haven't thought about what they're actually saying and what that means. It's not a family. Don't say it. It's one of the rare things that I'll have a really strong opinion on.
You have got a strong opinion.
Yeah,
here.
Don't say it's a family. It's not fair. And you put yourself in a difficult position, because of a company is a group of people coming together with the collective purpose of creating value. That's what a company does. So in order to continue to exist, you have to be creating value. Then if you break that down, it's like, well, you have to have people within the organizations that create value. If you have people that aren't performing and you are okay with that, and obviously then if you have someone that's not performing and they stay in the business, it's more likely that other people will not perform, and all plethora of unwanted consequence, then you're more likely to drop out of the infinite game. So you can't do it. Don't say it, or think about it. If you want to disagree with me, fine, but just have a real deep think about it, and have a couple of people that you'll have a debate with that will challenge you really well. And if you still decide you want to say family, then go for it. But just think about it at least.
Or write in. Yeah. Or come on the podcast.
Come on the podcast, and we'll have a debate.
Argue with Harvey.
Yes, that's again another good name for a podcast.
Argue with Harvey.
Like it. That's a good podcast. Is this a good podcast?